Hello everyone, I'm Iris. I finished my freshman year at Georgetown University a few weeks ago, and I thought I would just make a video on some tips and strategies that I used to maintain all A's throughout my first year. Just to give a little bit of background, my prospective majors are currently government and economics. And I also attend a semester school. I will be talking about what I did before the semester, during the semester, and also after the semester. So one of the first things that I do when I get my schedule is begin to characterize the type of course that I am taking. So I will take a look at factors such as class size, whether it is TA or professor based, so you know who you're actually going to be attending office hours and asking questions over email with, if it is asynchronous or synchronous, if it requires a lot of participation, if it's test, project, or essay based, the amount of reliance on a textbook, and if collaboration is allowed on assignments. I'll also look at the grading policy, so things like the harshness of the professor or the TA, consistency or variability in grading, percentage to letter grade breakdowns, if there's a curve or no curve, if there are any department requirements, such as only a certain amount of students or percentage of students can receive an A, and then also if there are optional exams. So for instance, if you have a high enough grade, some classes allow you to skip the final, and also for extra credit or grade saving opportunities. And there's also a variety of resources you can use to find all this information. I like to use the syllabus first because that has all of the official information provided by the teacher. I then also look at Rate My Professor, so you can get honest reviews from past students. You can look for extra credit opportunities, the harshness of the grading, and if it is TA reliant or not. And then I also sometimes consult upperclassmen or peers that I know who have taken the course because, again, they also have more recent insights onto the class or the professor. The next thing I do is I put all of the meeting days, assignments, due dates, and test dates onto Google Calendar. And you can use whatever calendar app or productivity app that works for you. I just use Google Calendar because it syncs with a lot of my school events and extracurricular activities. And it also gives you notifications, so I can just use it on my phone. And I put notifications for the day before and the day of an assignment due date or a test date. That way I make sure that I actually get it done and not just do it for last minute. I also color code, so the meeting times are a different color than important due dates and test dates, which I put in red. When the course actually begins, I make sure that I spend the first 2 weeks actually introducing myself to the professor and to the TA. That way, the person that you are learning from can actually put a face to a name. And even if you have a lecture class, I recommend going to office hours and introducing yourself. Obviously, this is pretty different if you are virtual versus if you're in person, but if you think that's super awkward, then you can ask questions about the research because professors love talking about themselves. And if you really don't want to talk about their research, then you can also ask for recommendations, so things like books or podcasts. And when they can put a name to a face, I think it's a lot more helpful because they can give you insight on projects and essays. And if you develop a relationship with them, you can also even ask them for advice, like professional advice. So things like securing an internship or getting research opportunities, or even a reference letter. I would suggest going to office hours at least twice a month, at least for like the first half of the semester. And if you find that office hours aren't that helpful, then maybe you can cut it down. But I do think that even if you don't think you have any misunderstandings on the course material, it's still important to establish a connection with your teacher. You can talk about literally anything during office hours. And for large classes, do not forget forget about your TA. They are a resource. Make sure to be emailing them a lot. You can go to their office hours and recitations. So I really think a combination of planning techniques is helpful. So in addition to Google Calendar, which gives me an overall view of my class times and due dates, I also use time blocking for day-to-day planning. And I always time block ahead. So for instance, if it is Sunday, I will time block for Monday from the time I wake up to the time I go to bed. And I also make sure to incorporate breaks and meal times and some additional room for leniency. And I don't beat myself up if I don't follow my schedule to a T, but I do like to try to stick to it at least. And so this was a typical school day when I did not have internship. So I was balancing an internship on the side, and this internship was around 15 hours per week, not including transportation. It was also in person. So if you do factor that in, that just means, less break times, shorter meal times, maybe working out less, but I would go to internship 3 days a week. Another strategy though is to watch asynchronous lectures ahead. Again, I cannot stress how much this saved time because I was always gone for internship. I would make sure that I would watch the asynchronous lecture a day before you're supposed to watch it. That way I can formulate questions and begin on my homework assignment so I can be prepared for attending office hours or sending emails to my TA or professor. As for note-taking and studying, I really relied on 4 main ways. The first is just regular pen and paper. The second is OneNote. The third is Quizlet. And the fourth is Drawboard PDF, which allows me to annotate PDFs on my laptop/tablet. It's, not really anything special. You can use anything for that. But I think choosing the right program depends a lot on the class that you're taking. It might take some trial and error to figure out which one really works best, but this is my general approach. So for Chinese, I used Drawboard PDF to annotate our lesson texts, and I also took in-class notes directly on the lesson text as well using Drawboard PDF. And since our homework and tests were all based on these lessons, it kind of worked out. But for studying for tests, I used mostly Quizlet. Although memorization is not ideal in general, language classes do require more memorization, so I think Quizlet is fine. I would basically just put all of the lessons phrases and then review those. And I also made sure that I could create my own sentences out of the grammar structures for the lesson. And starting 3 days before the test, I would reread each lesson text out loud every day and see if I could write all the phrases in Mandarin from their English translation. And I would start the unknowns, and from day 2, I would only study the unknowns and continuously narrow down until I could confidently write down all of the phrases from their English translation. For classes that don't have exams and are more reading and essay based, I would use inserted annotated PDFs into OneNote and type up notes for all of the readings. And that was really helpful for me because I could just Control F in OneNote and locate the concept while I'm writing my essay. And that was just, way more efficient than having to flip through a bunch of paper notes. I think active recall is another strategy that a lot of productivity influencers advocate for, which is definitely helpful for these types of classes. Coming up with your own questions that synthesize course material and then being able to answer it in your own words. So this works for both factual and more conceptual classes. So for example, what factors contributed to the failure of the Chinese self-strengthening movement could work for my history class, whereas what are the differences and similarities between hegemony and unipolarity would work for my international relations class. And for classes like econ and math, which require a lot of problem solving, I did handwritten notes so that I could solve problems along with the lecture. For math tests, I would create a 1-pager of important theorems and functions, and then do a lot of diverse practice problems and past exams to prepare. For econ tests, since there was no memorization and they were open note tests over a period of several days, I just made sure that I understood all the concepts really, really well and could do practice problems in past exams. Generally, my goal is to do pretty well in the beginning of the semester so that I don't have to try as hard on the final. And so in some cases, I could actually even skip the final, which was the case for my history class. And I also prioritized classes that I knew were more difficult or were related to my major, or had department curves, since that meant I had to, do better than my peers, which is not the best way to think about it, but it kind of is what it is. And I also made sure that I made learning more interesting by finding connections to my real life or the real world. So current events, podcasts, books, and everyday conversations. For instance, for international relations, I would follow several international relations podcasts on Spotify and could connect those current events that they talk about to class concepts. Another thing that I want to mention is dealing with setbacks. And I'm the type of person who does not take academic setbacks that well, since I do kind of put a lot of pressure on myself, but I really had to deal with this last semester, especially in my economics class, because that was brutal. I did not do well on my first econ midterm. I cried for hours because of it, and while it's okay to feel upset, the most important thing is you turn that sadness into momentum to do better. Some of the steps that I take after not doing so well is, first, I review the assignment or test and pay attention to the parts that I got wrong and why I got it wrong. So was it a silly mistake or was it a conceptual misunderstanding? And the latter is not so great. The second is to email your professor or TA right away if you have any urgent concerns. So questions about the assignment or test, or if you think they might have made a mistake in their grading. The third is to identify opportunities to restore your grade. Are there more extra credit opportunities or future tests or assignments that can pull your grade up? Is it possible for you to drop the lowest exam score? Then figure out what you will do differently from now on. So to just give a little brief overview, after a exam or after I deal with a setback, I like to think of my next times and my like bests. So next times are basically opportunities for improvement in the future, whether that be the next exam period or perhaps the next semester. And this should be as actionable as possible. So in the case of econ, I knew that I wanted to attend office hours as much as possible. So basically attend office hours or recitation at least twice a week to make sure that I really understood the concepts, do all of the practice exams available, and other tasks that could make sure that I avoided those sort of mistakes. I also think, it is important to think with an abundance mindset. So celebrate your achievements. These are the like bests. What did you do well? And what did you like best about what you did during the exam period or how you approached the assignment? And just always make sure you're attending office hours and recitations, even if you think you understand the course material, because chances are you might be missing something, or you can also just always hone your confidence. Finally, I also make sure that I have a lot of balance. So physical and emotional well-being are interlinked with academic success, and I really try to bring everything together. So you should set a routine. I usually wake up and go to bed near the same time every day. At the same time, I recognize that if you need a little bit more sleep, it's okay occasionally to take a short nap, but don't let it throw you off track. So when I do need extra rest, I would just take that extra rest during my break time. And I also think it's important to have a set of coping strategies that work for you. So I would tend to journal when I'm stressed or use deep breathing exercises when I find it difficult to fall asleep. I think it's important to schedule healing time. So take midday breaks or to catch up on YouTube or Asian dramas. And also planning out fun activities at the end of the week. So mine was going to the farmer's market every Sunday, and that's just my chill personal time to really rejuvenate. At the end of the semester or after the semester is over, make sure that you say thank you to your professors and to your teachers and to anyone who has contributed to your academic journey. It's just really a good practice to express gratitude, and it's also a way to keep that relationship that you might have built. And then lastly, I like to reflect. So those are my like bests and next times for the overall semester, or perhaps even the entire school year. That way I can set goals for next year and start brainstorming, how I've developed as a person and how it might shape my future career path. And that is the end of this video. I hope these tips and strategies might be helpful for you. And if not, then this is just what I do. So there's no really formula to how to approach getting good grades, but I hope you relax and enjoy your summer. And if not, and you're still in finals, then good luck.